Standing before the new cohort, Jasmine began her welcoming speech with the same words her father had once told her. Engines don't care who you are. They don't care about your last name, your skin color, or your bank account. They only care if you understand them, if you respect them, if you're willing to listen to what they're telling you. Today, you're going to start learning their language. Some of you will pick it up quickly, others will struggle. That's okay. What matters is that you don't give up, that you keep listening, keep learning, keep growing. She looked at each young face, seeing her own past reflected in their mixture of excitement and nervousness. There was Maria, whose parents had crossed the border with nothing but hope, and who had been taking apart and rebuilding her family's single car since she was 10. There was Jerome, who had lost his older brother to street violence and saw the program as his ticket to a different life. There was Ashley, the only girl from the wealthy side of town, who had fought her parents for the right to work with her hands instead of going to tennis camp. "You're going to face challenges here," Jasmine continued, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "Some people will doubt you. Some will actively try to make you fail. They'll say you don't belong, that you're just filling a quota, that you're taking opportunities from more deserving people. When that happens, and it will happen, remember why you're here. You're here because you have a gift, a talent, a passion that deserves to be developed. You're here because somewhere in your past, someone believed in you enough to teach you something about engines, about tools, about problem solving. Honor that person by becoming the best version of yourself." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But also remember that you're not alone. Every person who came before you in this program is your ally. We've all faced the same doubts, the same challenges, the same moments of wondering if we really belong. We belonged then, and you belong now." Old Samuel Williams sat in the front row of the audience, his eyes glistening with pride as he watched his granddaughter command the room. His arthritis had gotten worse over the past year, making it impossible for him to work on engines anymore, but his mind remained sharp. He had become the program's unofficial historian and counselor, spending hours with struggling students, sharing stories of the old days when being a black mechanic meant fighting for respect every single day. He saw in these young people the continuation of a legacy that stretched back generations, to the first black mechanics who had learned their trade in spite of every obstacle society placed in their path. After Jasmine finished speaking, he stood slowly, supporting himself with a cane that Jasmine had bought him with her first real paycheck. "I want to add something," he said, his voice gravelly but strong. "This program isn't just about learning to fix engines. It's about fixing the broken parts of our society, one young person at a time. Every one of you who succeeds makes it easier for the next person who looks like you, talks like you, comes from where you come from. You're not just learning a trade. You're changing the world." The first week of training was intensive. Jasmine had designed the curriculum herself, blending traditional mechanical education with the intuitive approaches her father had taught her. Students spent mornings in classroom sessions learning theory, afternoons in hands-on workshop training, and evenings in what she called listening labs, where they sat with running engines and learned to identify problems by sound alone. It was this last component that set the program apart from traditional technical education. "Anyone can learn to read a diagnostic computer," Jasmine explained to Mr. Peterson during one of their regular meetings, "but a computer can only tell you what its sensors detect. An experienced ear can hear problems before they become big enough for sensors to notice. That's the difference between good mechanics and great ones." The transformation in the students was remarkable to watch. Within a month, kids who had never held a torque wrench were performing basic maintenance tasks with confidence. Within 3 months, they were diagnosing problems that stumped some of the junior mechanics. But more than technical skills, they were developing something harder to quantify but equally important: pride. Pride in their work, pride in their abilities, pride in their potential. For many of them, it was the first time anyone had expected excellence from them rather than failure. The ripple effects extended beyond the workshop. Parents reported that their children were more focused in regular school, understanding for the first time how physics and mathematics applied to real-world problems. Teachers noticed improved confidence and participation. Several students who had been on the verge of dropping out re-engaged with their education, seeing it now as a stepping stone to a career rather than a meaningless obligation. David Chen had become Jasmine's unofficial deputy, handling much of the day-to-day training while she focused on program development and expansion. Their teaching styles complemented each other perfectly. Where Jasmine was intuitive and passionate, David was methodical and patient. Students who struggled with one approach often thrived with the other. "You know what the best part of this program is?" David said one evening as they reviewed student progress reports. "It's not just that we're training mechanics. We're proving that talent exists everywhere. These kids, given the same opportunities as wealthy students, are matching or exceeding them in every metric." He pulled up statistics on his tablet. "Our graduates have a 100% job placement rate, with average starting salaries 20% above industry standard. 3 of our first cohort have already been promoted. 2 are planning to start their own shops. 1 got recruited by Tesla. But not everything was smooth sailing. There was resistance from some quarters, particularly from competitors who saw Peterson Motors' commitment to diversity as either a publicity stunt or a threat to the established order. Thompson, who had started his own consulting firm, had been spreading rumors that the mentorship program was lowering standards, that Peterson Motors was sacrificing quality for political correctness. These whispers found receptive ears among those who preferred the old ways, who were comfortable with workshops that looked and sounded like they had for generations. The challenge came to a head when a major automotive magazine decided to do an investigative piece on the program. The journalist, a middle-aged man named Richard Harlan, who had been covering the industry for 20 years, arrived with barely concealed skepticism. He had heard Thompson's rumors and came prepared to expose what he assumed was a well-meaning but ultimately flawed social experiment. "Let me understand this correctly," Harlan said during his interview with Jasmine, his tone condescending. "You're telling me that kids from the inner city, many of whom have criminal records or come from broken homes, can be trained to the same level as graduates from technical colleges? In just 6 months?" Jasmine met his gaze steadily. "I'm not telling you anything. I'm showing you. Would you like to see our students in action?" What followed was a carefully orchestrated demonstration that Jasmine had been planning for weeks. She had selected 5 students from different backgrounds, each with their own story of overcoming adversity. But she didn't want Harlan to see sob stories. She wanted him to see competence. The first student was Maria, who diagnosed and repaired a complex transmission problem in a BMW while explaining every step in both English and Spanish, translating technical terms flawlessly between both languages. The second was Jerome, who had developed a new technique for balancing high-performance engines that reduced vibration by 30% compared to factory specifications. The third was Ashley, who had surprised everyone by becoming an expert in electrical systems, able to trace and repair faults that would typically require expensive diagnostic equipment using just a multimeter and intuition. The fourth was Tommy, a white kid from rural Arkansas whose family had lost their farm, and who had turned out to have an almost supernatural ability to tune engines for maximum fuel efficiency. The fifth was Lily, a quiet Chinese immigrant who had become the program's expert on hybrid systems, understanding the intersection of mechanical and electrical systems in a way that even experienced mechanics struggled with. Harlan watched in growing amazement as each student demonstrated not just competence, but excellence. These weren't diversity hires or charity cases. They were skilled technicians who happened to come from non-traditional backgrounds. But the moment that truly changed his perspective came when the students were presented with a challenge: 5 identical engines, each with a different hidden problem, to be diagnosed and repaired within an hour. It was a test that would challenge experienced mechanics. The students worked with quiet concentration, occasionally consulting with each other, sharing tools and knowledge without being prompted. Maria helped Tommy with a Spanish manual for a component. Lily translated technical specifications from Mandarin for Jerome. Ashley and Maria worked together on a particularly stubborn electrical issue. They weren't just individual success stories. They were a team, each member strengthening the whole. All 5 engines were running perfectly within 50 minutes. Harlan's subsequent article, titled The future of American auto repair looks nothing like its past, and that's a good thing, became one of the magazine's most read pieces. In it, he wrote, "We've been having the wrong conversation about diversity in technical fields. It's not about lowering standards or giving handouts. It's about recognizing that talent doesn't follow zip codes or skin colors." The James Williams Memorial Mentorship Program isn't revolutionary because it helps underprivileged kids. It's revolutionary because it's finding and developing talent that our industry has been stupidly overlooking for generations. The article's impact was immediate and far-reaching. Other automotive companies began reaching out to Peterson Motors, wanting to learn about the program, to potentially replicate it. Jasmine found herself invited to speak at conferences, to consult with major corporations, to testify before congressional committees about workforce development. But she remained focused on the ground-level work, on the individual students whose lives were being transformed. One particularly meaningful moment came when she received a letter from Marcus Thompson. It was brief and carefully worded, the prose of someone whose lawyer had probably reviewed it. But between the legal cautiousness there seemed to be genuine remorse. "Miss Williams," it read, "I've had time to reflect on my behavior and attitudes. I was wrong. My prejudices blinded me to excellence and caused me to act in ways that shame me. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your courage in facing my ignorance has forced me to confront truths about myself I had long avoided. The work you're doing matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Jasmine read the letter 3 times before putting it away. She didn't respond. There was nothing to say, but she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Change was possible, even in the most unlikely people. The second year of the program ended with a graduation ceremony that drew attendees from across the industry. Mr. Peterson had rented out a banquet hall, treating it with the same importance as a college graduation. Each graduate received not just a certificate but a professional tool set, engraved with their name and the program logo. Job offers were extended on the spot, with companies competing for the top graduates. Starting salaries were discussed openly, breaking the taboo that often kept wages depressed. Jasmine watched from the side of the stage, now 17 and preparing for her own next chapter at MIT. In her keynote address, she reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. 2 years ago, I walked into Peterson Motors as a scared 15-year-old girl, carrying nothing but my father's teachings and my grandfather's wisdom. I faced mockery, discrimination, and challenges designed to break me. But I also found allies, mentors, and eventually a family. That's what this program has become, a family of people who understand that excellence has no color, no gender, no predetermined address. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, young graduates, their proud families, industry professionals, and journalists. But our work isn't done. For every young person in this room who got a chance, there are thousands more who are just as talented, just as deserving, waiting for their opportunity. This program is just the beginning. We're going to build technical schools in underserved communities. We're going to partner with companies across the country. We're going to change the face of American industry, one talented young person at a time. The applause was sustained and heartfelt, but Jasmine was already thinking ahead. MIT would give her the theoretical knowledge to complement her practical skills. She planned to major in mechanical engineering with a minor in social entrepreneurship. Her goal was to return to Detroit, not just as an engineer, but as someone who could scale the mentorship model nationally, perhaps even globally. The Formula One team had sweetened their offer, proposing to sponsor her education and guarantee her a position upon graduation, but with the understanding that she would continue her work with underprivileged youth. They had even proposed creating an international version of the program, identifying young talent in developing countries who could be trained to work on high-performance vehicles. As the ceremony ended and people began to mingle, Jasmine found herself in conversation with Sir Reginald Worthington, the British Formula One engineer who had been so impressed by her work. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "what you've built here reminds me of the apprenticeship programs we used to have in Britain, before we decided that everyone needed a university degree to be considered valuable. We lost something important when we abandoned those programs. You're not just bringing them back, You're making them better. Jasmine nodded. The difference is that we're not limiting ourselves based on who someone's father was or what guild they belonged to. We're truly opening the doors to talent wherever it exists. Later that evening, Jasmine sat in her grandfather's workshop one last time before leaving for MIT. The space was quiet now. Samuel, having retired completely, but it still smelled of oil and metal, still held the ghost of thousands of hours of work. She ran her hands over the worn workbench where her father had taught her to hold her first wrench, where her grandfather had shown her how to listen to an engine's heartbeat. "I did it, Dad," she whispered to the empty space. "I showed them that we belong, that we've always belonged." As if in response, a breeze stirred through the workshop, rustling papers and making the hanging tools chime softly against each other. It sounded almost like applause, like approval, like love echoing across time and space. The impact of Jasmine's story rippled outward in ways she couldn't have imagined. News outlets picked up the tale of the girl who fixed the motor and shut them up in minutes, as one viral video title put it. The footage Jerry had initially recorded to humiliate her became instead a powerful testament to skill triumphing over prejudice. Educational institutions began re-examining their admission criteria, questioning whether standardized tests and traditional metrics were causing them to miss exceptional talent. Technical colleges reported increased applications from minority students, many citing Jasmine's story as their inspiration. But perhaps the most meaningful impact was on the individuals whose lives were directly touched. Maria, the first graduate, opened her own shop specializing in imported vehicles, employing other graduates from the program. Jerome got recruited by NASCAR, becoming one of the few black mechanics in professional racing. Ashley returned to her wealthy neighborhood and opened a boutique repair shop that catered to high-end electric vehicles, proving to her skeptical parents that manual labor could indeed be both profitable and intellectually stimulating. Tommy started a YouTube channel teaching engine repair, his easy manner and clear explanations earning him hundreds of thousands of subscribers and enough advertising revenue to support his family. Lily was recruited by Honda to work on their next generation of hybrid engines, her intuitive understanding of system integration proving invaluable. 3 years later, when Jasmine graduated from MIT with highest honors, the ceremony was attended not just by her family and friends, but by dozens of mentorship program graduates who had driven or flown in from across the country to celebrate her achievement. Her thesis, on developing diagnostic systems for resource-limited environments, had already been optioned by several major corporations. But she had bigger plans, with backing from a coalition of automotive companies, including Peterson Motors and the Formula One team. She was launching the Williams Institute for Technical Excellence, a network of schools that would bring high-level technical training to underserved communities across America. Standing at the podium at MIT, looking out at the sea of caps and gowns, Jasmine thought about that day 5 years earlier when Marcus Thompson had tried to humiliate her. "You're not your father," he had said, intending it as an insult. He was right, but not in the way he meant. She wasn't her father. James Williams had been a brilliant mechanic who died too young, his talent recognized by too few. She was Jasmine Williams, and she had taken his legacy and transformed it into something that would outlive them both. She had proven that talent, true talent, could not be suppressed by prejudice, could not be limited by circumstance, could not be denied by those who thought they were gatekeepers of excellence. In her graduation speech, selected by her classmates as the student speaker, she said, "5 years ago, someone told me I didn't belong in a professional workshop. They said I was a quota, a charity case, a social experiment. They tried to humiliate me with an impossible challenge, expecting me to fail. Instead, I fixed the motor and shut them up in minutes. But that wasn't the victory. The victory came in the years that followed, in the dozens of young people who got chances they wouldn't have otherwise had, in the companies that learned to look beyond their biases, in the industry that slowly began to understand that diversity isn't about lowering standards. It's about recognizing excellence wherever it exists." She paused, her voice growing stronger. "To everyone out there who's been told they don't belong, that they're not enough, that they should give up, don't listen. Find your engine, whatever that might be, your passion, your calling, your gift, and pursue it with everything you have. There will be people who try to stop you, who mock you, who dismiss you. But there will also be people who see your light and help it shine brighter. Focus on the latter, prove the former wrong, and never, ever let anyone tell you that you're not worthy of your dreams. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes, but Jasmine was already looking ahead, planning, dreaming, building. The girl who had walked into Peterson Motors as a scared 15-year-old had become a woman who would reshape an entire industry. And she was just getting started. 10 years after that first day at Peterson Motors, the automotive industry looked radically different. The Williams Institute had expanded to 15 locations across the United States, with plans for international expansion. Thousands of young people from disadvantaged backgrounds had been trained and placed in high-paying technical jobs. The ripple effects had transformed entire communities, with successful graduates returning to mentor the next generation, creating a virtuous cycle of opportunity and achievement. Jasmine, now 28, had become one of the most sought-after consultants in the automotive industry, her unique combination of technical brilliance and social consciousness making her invaluable to companies trying to navigate an increasingly diverse marketplace. But she never forgot where she came from. Every year on the anniversary of that first day, she returned to Peterson Motors, now renamed the Peterson-Williams Automotive Center, in honor of both her and her father. She would stand in the workshop, now filled with young faces of every color and background, and tell the story of how a scared teenage girl faced down prejudice and won. Not through anger or revenge, but through excellence and determination. "You're not your father," had been intended as an insult, a dismissal, a way to make her feel small. Instead, it had become her rallying cry. She wasn't her father. She was his daughter, his student, his legacy, and she had taken everything he taught her and used it to change the world. One engine, one student, one opportunity at a time. The girl who fixed the motor and shut them up in minutes had become the woman who fixed an entire industry's broken culture. And she was far from finished.